listen to YouTube, and we are now doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. All right. Hey, all right, everyone. Welcome. It is Friday, July 3rd. This is the observed holiday for July 4th. We welcome you to be with us today. I am glad that Liz Matory has taken time out from her busy schedule to be with me once again. I think we make a pretty good team.
Yeah, and this time I'm at Mom's house, so
okay.
I love the fact that I'm changing locations.
That's right.
Hearing the background, you know.
So you've got Team Life on your T-shirt,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I forgot that with Zoom, you get smaller headshots than when I do using my other camera. So
right. Yeah, USA, boom.
You know, something that doesn't seem to be very popular with a certain segment of the population anymore.
Oh. Yeah,
I'm
sure we're going to talk about that in a moment.
Yes, we will, and that's how I think this. Let's just start off by talking about the fact that we've got July 4th coming up tomorrow officially, but a lot of things are happening today, fireworks in different locations and things like that. But this country, this may be some of the biggest turmoil we've had, at least in our lifetimes. In recent memory for things leading up to July 4th, Independence Day, where the country seems to be very torn. We've had so many protests, all the strife that's going on. I mean, what's your take here on this, Liz?
I have a lot of takes.
I'm sure you do.
I'll whittle it down. No, it's you think about it, and honestly, my biggest recommendation for everyone is to turn off cable news. Like, if you want peace and tranquility in your life again, just turn off cable news. Try it for 1 week. Just try it for 1 week and see how you feel. Because you talk about, us being divided and feeling this anxiety and angst. It's like, but are we really? July 4th obviously is a huge holiday for our country. It was my father's favorite holiday, actually. So I'm slightly nostalgic because he's not here with us now. But, this is the time where we all Americans take a break from everything and come together and celebrate our shared heritage. And that's something that I've gotten really annoyed and or angry about over this last month, I guess, and a half, is that the language and the rhetoric around BLM or whatever you want to call it, this movement, which I think I have my own personal opinions about it being a movement, an organic movement, so to speak, is the fact that they presume that this is not your country. And that in itself is a fallacy. As an American citizen, this is yours. You know what I mean? The thing that you're raging against is yourself, especially out of every other country in the world. The country only exists because of us, So good, bad, ugly, awesome, not awesome, all of it is ours. And it's our responsibility to honor it and not denigrate it or, vilify it, but really just to really appreciate where we have come. And to say that this is the most divisive, horrible, racist time in our history, as I've said multiple times prior to, is not only, again, it's not even it went from us being a slap in the face to the previous generations. Now you literally are taking out your stupid machetes and, stabbing folks in the back. That's how far we're going, farther and farther and farther back. It's almost as if they want to erase the 20th century and forget all of the amazing strides that we did in the 20th century. And oddly enough, what I want to say about that is that a lot of these folks weren't born in the 20th century. Mind blown, right? They were not around. Again, Auntie Liz is freaking out because I'm wondering why don't they get it? It's starting in the year 2000, 2001, September 11th, all of that, being that millennial, you have no personal reference point to the 20th century. And for us who are 35, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, beautifully 100, we're excuse me, what's your problem? I mean, we understand what problems are because there have been problems this whole time. But kid you not, there are people who are literally throwing the proverbial baby out with the bathwater. And underneath that undercurrent is, yes, there are, I don't know, maybe 100 people, I don't know what the number is, that really do want to destroy this country. And with all of that muck is, oh, let's just get rid of the United States while we're at it. It's like, no, because again, going back to the point is like, if you're getting rid of the United States, you're getting rid of yourself. So yes, happy Independence Day, Americans. Live it up.
Okay, so so there's some things that go through my mind as I listen to you talk about that. One is that particularly with these young people, and it's a lot of this movement, a lot of these things that are going on are driven by a younger generation,
right?
And they have no appreciation for history, they have no understanding of history, and they have no idea really. I mean, it's like, look, if you think if you're having a problem, if you think we're the oppressors, please go to China, go to another country. We have freedoms that are unparalleled.
You can go to Mexico, like go right there and just be enslaved to one of these maquileras or whatever they were called, and see how you feel about that. You're like, literally, you think your bougie self with your cute look is going to like last any longer. You're going to be uprooted, taken from human, trafficking, and made someone's, sex slave. So stop with that. You know what I mean? That is the reality in Mexico. Oh,
so let me, no, that's fine. I mean, so, what about the education system in the sense of how much of the education system plays into this? I mean,
it's everything. It's everything. Right.
Yeah. I mean, my thing here is just that I think that, a lot of this is driven, as I said before, their lack of understanding. And I think that our education system has really failed our young people in teaching them the history the way they need to be taught. I mean, you talk about erasing the 20th century, erasing history. I mean, in essence, this is what we've been seeing in public education and to some degree in higher education, is that as time goes along, we have become, the classes, the lessons, the curriculum has become much more progressive left.
Yep.
And the things that have been great about America are disappearing.
Yeah, I believe that everybody, it's again, broken record. It's No Child Left Behind onwards, where there was a deliberate sort of takeover, top-down approach to education, where you not only had like the federal government really dictating, like totalitarian government dictating what would be in the curriculum. Everybody wanted to teach to the test. Okay, if you're going to teach the test, right? Like I was in school choice movement at the time, so I remember all of that happening real time. And, it was one of those things where it's like, this doesn't make any sense. If you are going to make 50 states at least know this, right, in order to pass these tests. And granted, we did have, and we still do have, difficulties with rudimentary skills, and that's a whole nother conversation. But in order to address these, systemic problems that we actually did have in our population, what they did, some people had good intentions, some had good intentions, but for the most part, they said, we can fix this. We are going to prescribe literally the 10 things out of my head, 10 things that the people need for history, 10 things first of all, let's focus on science and math primarily and make history and all of these soft, gushy things secondary, like the arts or sports even. That's what happened over the last 20 years. So they literally made it as if history is secondary. And mind you, I'm a history major from Columbia, so history is extremely important to me. That is where the problem lies. Our education system, again, goes from our founding, where every one of these colonies, the reason why there were 13 different ones, they were settled by 13 different types of faith-based individuals. The first thing they did was to educate educate the newly born would-be citizens of the what would have been United States America. They wanted to make sure that there was an educated population, right? That, mind you, they were all maybe slave owner white males, maybe. They weren't women at the time that were really encouraged to learn. Obviously, we have all that history. Obviously, Blacks weren't included in the education system. But still, back in the day, it was, we want to make sure that our people were educated. So they formed, one of the first things they did was formed schools to make sure that there would be at least the rudimentary skills for the population that they thought would have been, a part of the population was educated. Fast forward to now where, yes, there's more access to education. Obviously, women are and Black folks are able to learn how to read, for example. That took a while to get to, but we got to it, right? It went from making sure that your population is educated and had the tools to govern themselves, right? To flip to now, we have to govern over our citizens. And this education system is what we are going to do to make sure they either stay under their thumb or literally with the flip of the switch, we can activate them into rebels. That's what happened over the last, I would say, 40 years of public education. Yay!
Well, that was really interesting. That was interesting to me, though, because I think you're actually the first person that's actually kind of broken this down on the whole STEM side, because we have put so much emphasis on STEM that it really I hadn't really thought about what gets left behind. I mean, it's really, there are a lot of other subjects that are getting left behind. And yeah, I mean, I love history. My son loved history. I mean, obviously you talked about, you were a history major, you love history. I know a lot of people, that are in that same vein. And, I guess when you look at it, you're like, what happened here? It's like,
and like history is the story of us, right? It's everything that encapsulates the society. That includes culture. That includes the language you use. That includes the music that each period uses to express themselves. History, literally, I'm sorry, I'm just going at it, but like that's what defines society in itself.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that. So there's another thing that I wonder, and I want to get your opinion on too, with regard to Independence Day and everything like this, and just this feels like an Independence Day, July 4th, unlike any other that I can really remember in my lifetime. And I don't really remember as much as as a child, because I'm now pushing 61, but even
looking good, hey.
even for the last 20 years, anything I look in the last couple of decades. But I'm beginning to wonder, I mean, how much has the pandemic affected the feelings as well too, and how much of that has maybe fed into and elevated some of these protests to a level they may not have had if we hadn't had all these other things going on? I mean, do they kind of work hand in hand?
Sure. Was it fabricated or deliberate? Maybe, but just what we've experienced ourselves. It's like, I mean, I'm a little bit of a rager, so I raged against the machine a little. When they said shut down, I said leave. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, shut down, leave, shut down, leave. So I sort of did not abide by the stay-at-home order because it'd be just myself, just staying home by myself. It's like, that's not fun. So I say that to say that, like, there was this pent-up physical lockdown and then spiritual, emotional, like, anxiety that was pent up over 2 months for the people who literally stayed at home. And I think that's an issue where, they're the same folks who are like, virtue signaling with face masks, right? They're literally like mask shaming people, if you're not wearing a mask because you're not, exhibiting good behavior. And, I think this concept of how to conduct yourself or not conduct yourself is at the heart of these protests / riots. I feel for the generation because they have the COVID stuff was just the last sort of straw where they're dealing with thousands of dollars of debt from school. They're dealing with underemployment. Like, I mean, our generation was dealing with it too. They're just the next generation to deal with, like, you know, the plateau effect of our economy, our crony capitalist society. And again, we as conservatives, we on the non-leftist part of the society sort of didn't really pay, I don't want to say we didn't pay attention to their issues. It's just that we were so, I think, busy with dealing with our own stuff and trying to find our own and keep our own and develop our own, that there is a bit of a distancing, because they feel like as if we don't care, or they feel as if there's no real legitimate space for them to create their own American dream. Don't forget, I'm 40, right? So my generation, there are fewer and fewer people getting married. There are fewer and fewer people buying their first homes. We might just get started doing that now. So that COVID sort of just amplified all of the generational anxiety that my generation and the generation after us have, because it sort of shows how far or what we lack, if you will. And that's it's depressing if you allow it to depress you, but it also is something that, again, leftist, radical, Marxist, communists love to take advantage of. You know? They love to take advantage of the marginalized part of society. And the marginalized part of society aren't just Black people, aren't just women, aren't just LGBTQ people. It is pretty much everyone under the age of 40 feels as if we are not a part of society, and or we feel sort of this guilt that we aren't able to offer, and we're not able to go to the next level. And we want to blame something. We have a lot of things to blame. Like, the whole system is screwed up, let's just be honest. But some folks are responding to that deficit. And that, of course, we know as faith-based people, that hole that you have isn't going to be filled by material stuff. It'll be filled with spiritual growth. And that's something that, you know, people sort of don't consider, and they want to, you know, protest instead.
Yeah, you know, and I think, you know, with the pandemic too, because, you know, we had to stay at home. Schools went to online education, right, to that, which was questionable in terms of how the school systems handled that, and you know, people working at home. I do think there is an element here where, because people were at home and there were a lot of disinterested, you know, younger people, school kids, whether or not it was high school, middle school, college, that they wound up looking for other ways to channel their energy or to spend their time, and it wound up being in these movements. And so that I think the movements have got a lot more oomph behind them, a lot more support, because people haven't been doing, you know, their normal process. They would have been so busy, they wouldn't have had time to pay attention to a lot of this before.
And let's not forget, and that's something that I am very concerned about, is the impact of, I sound like a fuddy-duddy, but the video games and the mass media, all of it, literally, when you consume it, you are filled with rage in a lot of these entertainment modules. I've witnessed it with the younger people in my life. I kid you not, I'm like yelling at them, can you turn off the video game? Turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. And literally, it's as if they are connected. Their brain is connected into that world. It could just be, what is this, Fortnite or whatever. But Fortnite, as cheesy as it sounds, literally, you're running around shooting people in order to create some, I want to say stupid, but crazy structure or whatever. Stupid, whatever. You know what I mean? And, you know, when you are spending hours, like hours on end of that virtual world, I kid you not. I wish more people would evaluate the impact of the psyche from these new forms of video game, because it's not Atari. Like it's something about the virtual nature of it, how it, like, people like literally have these modules where like or consoles that they're literally wrapped around it. You know what I mean? It's like their whole world is a virtual world. And so is there a connection? Would there ever be someone to study said connection of this? I am enraged throwing my, video, what is this thing called? Controller.
Yeah, we're big
not
gamers.
Joystick anymore. Not joystick anymore.
That's right.
That has to play in what we're seeing, manifest in the young people, because they are literally translating what they do online or in video into real life. Like it looks like freaking Sim City. You know, I mean, do they still have Sim City? I don't know.
I think it exists, but it's been overtaken by, as you say, by Fortnite and everything like this. And I look at my 3 kids.
Yeah.
The youngest, who grew up definitely much more in the he's 28 years old, definitely grew up in the heart of the video game boom. His older brother, who is now 32,
right.
Also was part of that, and they play a decent amount of video games, but the younger one definitely is very much a gamer, whereas his older brother he plays it, but he's too busy doing other things in life, and won't let that take over. But it's amazing, how much these video games, occupy people's times, to the extent that people make a lot of money, playing video games too.
Yeah. There's now virtual sports. You can have, I think you can major in virtual sports in college.
Esports.
Yeah, esports. Yeah. And so I'm like, you're going to like downplay history, as I said before, and you wonder why society is the way that we are. Again,
they may not know anything, but they sure know how to play a heck of a video game.
But I mean, there are these movies too. Like I stopped watching a lot of these movies a couple of years ago, but I remember there was this one movie, I don't know the title of it, but it was almost as if like the kids ended up being the soldiers because they were trained to play video games. And it's like this futuristic thing where kids under 15, like 15 was where you peaked out. But the kids that are younger than 15 literally were the ones behind controllers, and they were actually controlling actual bullets and planes and rockets and all of this stuff. In real life. And so I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Perhaps it already exists, because that's what I think the Air Force does. The Air Force actually does that. But I think that the cooler heads have to prevail, because it's unsustainable to do this and to live your life like that. It'll get old. Like Saul Alinsky said, when tactics get old, stop using them. I'm hoping that over the next couple of weeks and or months, where people, as you said, go back to school, maybe they might need to go back to school so that they feel like they have a sense of place. Like it might not be enough for kids under the age of 24. It might not be enough socialization just to be online. They actually need the connection that in-person school and class and connectivity offer. And that's something that we all have to consider.
Yeah, well, I had a very interesting conversation yesterday. I did an interview with the director of the School of Communications at Brigham Young University. My kids have gone there. We set up a scholarship, kind of a program in my father's name. Yeah. And, so I asked him, I wanted to kind of find out what the university had done, when the pandemic hit, and what the plans were going forward and things like this. And because I had just seen an announcement that they're going to do somewhat of a hybrid in a sense of going in the fall. I mean, the students are coming back to class in the fall, and that'll happen towards the middle to the end of August. And then after Thanksgiving, they will not return. The rest of the semester, which is only going to be a couple of weeks anyway, will be done online. But I have visited the School of Communications, and so I know that they do several things in there. It's not just journalism, but it is marketing and advertising, as well as broadcast journalism. So they have, for example, they have a studio in the communication school, and they have a daily broadcast that was going statewide.
Wow.
They can't do the program like that anymore because they can't be in the studio. They can't have the cameramen and all the people in the control room. So they had to figure out something else. They have a fun little like advertising lab where it's very, it's very like the tech world where people sit around, they've got games and stuff like that, and they throw stuff around while they toss around ideas. They kind of play around and noodle around, things like that. Once again, they really can't gather for that. But one of the things he told me was,
that's what they ideate. I hate the word, but that's their iterative process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so, what they're doing in the fall, what he said for classes is that, anything like the large lecture halls of where they had 200 students, that's all online no matter what. Yeah. Classes have to be 50 people or less, going forward. But, they do miss, because there is a lot of interaction that goes on. They've had to, try to figure out what they did. They said they found that they could use an iPhone 11 and shoot a lot of video and edit the video on iPhone 11, and they can get a lot of things done that way. But, it's a very different process for them. And one of the questions I asked him was about kind of really the value of education, higher education, because BYU actually is very inexpensive, which gives them a huge advantage. The church really provides a huge subsidy for the education there. But when I talk about the Harvards and the Yales or the Stanfords, the big schools that cost a ton of money, right. What's the value for the students there? Students are complaining about tuition at these schools. And he says, luckily, because tuition is only about $6,000, that,
oh, wow.
The basic tuition, that it's not hard for the students to see value because they're not really paying a lot of money. Right. I think with room and board for a freshman, I think, when my kids were freshmen, we were talking maybe $10,000 a year or something like that when they were going to school years ago. So it was really affordable, obviously. And, he's saying that he does not blame students who are paying $50,000 or more a year to really question the value of an education. So, he has an advantage at the school he is teaching at and overseeing the school he's over teaching at. But I think he's also being honest, saying like, look, when you're charging $50,000 and above, and you're not providing all in class, in-person teaching, right. The students have a right to question about that. You mentioned debt. Why should they pile up, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year in debt if they're not getting the education that other people had received in the past? What's the value of that?
Yeah, well, I guess the good thing about it is that these folks will realize that socialism and communism do not work. You know what I mean? Like, all these organizations, all these institutions are capitalist. Like, they're the bad ones. I mean, they have bad aspects to them, I should say. There's a lot of greed, obviously, in a lot of them. And unfortunately, our US government is all intertwined with it in reference to the loan industry. So, you have to, oddly enough, this year, 2020, everybody says, oh, Vision 2020, or, 2020 vision, or whatever you want to call it. People are really getting to see the system. Not only are they seeing where the system is, but how you're going to interact with it, and what are you going to demand from it, and what are you going to not accept. This hits their bottom line. This can only last another semester. If they can't figure this stuff out, like my nieces, they're twins, boy and a girl, they're, I think, seniors this year. And, thank goodness they had 3 years of actual college experience at Princeton and Harvard. But again, how are you going to, as you said, encourage the folks who just didn't really graduate, but graduate from high school, poor babies, in the class of 2020 or class of 2021 from high school, you're right. Why am I applying for any college that charges more than $25,000 a year? I'm just throwing out that number because when I was at Columbia, it was $36,000 already. So I have no idea what it is now. But the alumni, the institutions, the leadership, first of all, again, they're the ones who created the mess in the first place. So having seen it play out, are they really willing to destroy our society? Is it worth it? Or are you going to take several steps back from your communist takeover of the world and say, I don't want to do this anymore? Like, I actually care about the future of higher education, the future of society, the future of, young minds. I don't want to ruin their lives. I don't want to ruin my life. I don't want to ruin life itself. Those questions are going to have to be answered pretty soon. Maybe these folks have already decided. They think that they're going to get their cut. They're going to have their little bunker, so they don't care if the world is going to end. They're going to be, 1,000 feet down in the crust of the world. I don't even know what people do these days, but we're at that point where people really have to decide, what frickin' team are you on? Are you on team destruction or are you on team life? Oh, see? Hashtag.
Oh, yeah. A little extra advertising in there. All right, move on. I want to move on to just talk a little bit more about COVID, and what's been going on here, and get your kind of feeling about this. So I don't know what your feeling was exactly at the beginning and all these things, and whether or not you thought that when summer hit that, we would see a downward trend, and then we'd buy ourselves some time until the fall, until the colder weather kind of hit. But this virus has been very stubborn. The summer has not, the numbers haven't really plummeted. As people were wearing face masks and took all these precautions, economy was shut down, things kind of abated. As the economy started to reopen, bars and beaches started to reopen, we started to see a resurgence because we even saw that being outdoors, but being close together was still a problem. The demonstrations, still a problem. Texas has now said, everybody's got to wear a mask in public. What do you think is going to happen here? I mean, I certainly do not think that the economy can survive a second shutdown of any kind. That we have to continue to move forward. Maybe it'll be at a slower pace, but we have to continue to move forward because businesses and things like this cannot survive under these conditions.
Yeah, again, that's the reason why this country is different than other countries. We move very quickly here. You know what I mean? Like, our cars are faster. We want more. We go big or go home. Like, that's just the American way. But what I thought what we did not do, the option that we did not take was what they call herd immunity, right? Should we just do that? And people sort of, just like other COVID issues or COVID viruses, sort of allow the virus to actually go through society so people can build up antibodies, et cetera, like normal, because that's what we normally do with flu and other stuff, cold, whatever. Or is it an actual virus that was created in a Chinese lab that was spliced with other viruses that could mutate? And were there incubation periods, or did they create a virus, a new COVID, if you will, that are unlike the other one that came prior to, that would manifest itself differently over time? If that's the case, that is messed up. You know what I mean? Like, there's no solution to that I would accept. I wouldn't accept a vaccine. I would not accept a mandatory vaccine. Like, we already are learning more and more about what big pharma has been doing to our bodies and our children. And again, that's probably another thing that we should look at with this raging generation after me. All of these toxins that have been incorporated into bodies, are we seeing the negative impact? Like, I guess the thing I have to say to this is, how are we going to live our lives? Are you going to live your life in constant, consistent, never-ending fear of something that you not only cannot see, but you don't even understand? And when you learn more about it, you're like, well, there's no real viable solution to it. So just let me live my life and let others live our lives. Or are you like, what are you going to do? Like, I don't think a mandatory vaccine is a solution, because we already know that we cannot trust, we can't trust that industry. We can't. And we as citizens have to decide how far are we willing to go. And this spike is it a spike? It isn't a spike. Like, look, really, like, that's, I think what has really been hurt by, whether it's the last several months or the last several years, going back to what your father did, is like, the media has been destroyed by all of it. No one trusts anything that anybody says anymore. And so when someone is telling them the truth now, that, first of all, where are they getting the truth? What facts are they, like, we are all, as a society, we were already doing that, but this time, like, so many half-truths happened to get us to do certain things that we didn't want to do in the first place. That is what has been really impacted, is our trust in media.
Yeah, so. No doubt about that. And, it's, and your point's well taken. I mean, I think we've talked about this in terms of, do we live in fear or do we go on living our lives? Right. And people have to make that individual decision. I don't know what the media or anybody really expected, in terms of the COVID-19 cases, that, once you started getting people together, I think this was inevitable. I mean, there was never going to be, I always say there's never going to be a zero number with any of this.
Yeah.
And so, yes, so it spikes up. Hospitalizations have increased to a degree, but they haven't seen deaths yet, though that tends to lag a little bit. But I don't think this is anywhere near as severe as the first round, where we didn't know what we were dealing with. And as far as the vaccine goes, it's like, look, I've never had the flu shot, in my life. And I have no intention of doing so until somebody forces me to do so. And vaccines and these shots, they're not guarantees. This is the best guess of scientists and these labs as to what will work. So, it will, everybody's different. What works for me may not work for you. So it's always kind of a crapshoot anyway, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm just thinking, it's like, who's making these decisions, right? Again, like, it's as if, like, it's like a perfect storm, if you will. When people said that you cannot ruin this country except from within. I mean, are we watching that now, where we as American electorate, we as American citizens don't know who we trust? We already, like, Gallup always studies, or has studied for years, the trust in institutions. Like, every year they come out with how good or how bad several institutions are played out by American citizens. I haven't seen it recently, but, like, it was already low from 2012. So where are we on that? And then, as you said before, it's like, what are you going to do about that? One of the positive things about the shutdown is that we were able to, hey, you would think that liberals like this, but we actually were going local. Like, we hyper localized our lives. We want to shop local. You said that you wanted us to shop local. You wanted us to support, the mom and pop stores. Well, let's do that. And I think more and more people are realizing, what do they care about the most? what can they control? And I have to worry about my survival and my family's survival. What do I need to do around that? Anything beyond that, I don't expect anyone else to think beyond that right now. That's another, again, inconvenient truth with the left. If that's what the answer is from most of, I would say even 45% of the population is going hyper-localized, they're going to take their kids out of those darn schools, right? They realize finally how the reason why their kids can't read and write is because of the schools, or it could be also the fact that we as parents didn't interact and should have interacted with our children more. And we are realizing that our children are our responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility to educate our children. Sorry, I was gonna say something else. Forget you, man. Like,
where's my button?
It's like, I'm taking my babies back. I already can adjust my schedule because you wanted me. You literally are making it perfect for our American families to reunify. So if you think that you're gonna pull out some statue and you think that statue is going to erase the memory or the understanding or appreciation for that period of time with my children, forget it. You're not going to do that. I am going to literally make sure that next generation that I'm responsible for knows where they came from and knows where we need to go. That is very empowering. So if that's the result of these last, 6 months? Oh my word, we did 6 months already. We've already done 6 months of 2020, right? Then the next 6 months of 2020, every individual has to determine how they are going to live their life, and not only live their life, but make the world that you're responsible for, how are you going to make it better?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right about that. So another topic I wanted to get your opinion on or subject, which was, so we talked a little bit about in the past about defunding the police and the big movement that's become. New York City is going to chop out $1 million or $1.5 million out of the police budget. President Trump reacted very angrily about this, yeah. and he couched it also in the terms of the fact that they've authorized to paint Black Lives Matter on the street in front of Trump Tower up in New York, and so he basically came out and he said that Black Lives Matter is a symbol of hate. Right. That was a pretty strong language, for President Trump. Is he right about that, or is this something that what he said here is only going to divide us more?
We're already divided. Number one. Number two, in those paradigms, and for some people, that's the issue. BLM has turned into a symbol of hate for, I would say, every person in the police force and their families, starting there. There are some videos that, again, aren't seen on your mainstream media, that there are literally hundreds, like droves of people saying, yelling, spewing, spitting, right? F you, F you, F you, F you, for an hour ad nauseum to the line of police. That's not love, my darlings. That is not love. You know what I mean? Are there issues? Have there been issues? Will there be issues in every single situation? Yes, because we're humans. I was reading, was this Genesis yesterday, and I'm like, ding, dang it, Cain and Abel. Like, from the beginning of time, we have had that as an undercurrent of our humanity. We all have to be mindful of it, but that is the exact same the energy that exists today, is painting that on the ground, on the street in front of Trump, alleviating any of that heartbreak. No, that is instigation. That is being, what's it called? You're riling up a tweet from President Trump, or I mean, I even am angry because they painted that at the end of 16th Street, where I grew
Right.
up. 16th Street drives right into the White House. They are literally taunting a group of people that it happens to not be a protected class, right? Police are not a protected class, but are they humans? Are they fellow citizens? Are they mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters? Yes. And do they feel like their lives literally are being threatened now? First of all, their lives have already been in danger since they signed up for the police force in the first place. And I have people who are police in my family, and I also come from a very liberal aspect, so I get it. But President Trump's tweet, you have to own that. You have become a symbol of hate. So what are you going to do about it? It's not all black. Then de Blasio's comments, oh my goodness, I cannot with de Blasio, right? I went up to New York for a fundraiser in December. Beautiful, Rockefeller Center. I'm surprised that people still go there, but they were lighting up Saks Fifth Avenue. It was like it's nostalgically beautiful. It was like New York, right? Then I go up to campus because I always go back to Columbia when I go back to New York, just because I always want to see what's different. Oh my gosh, so much is different. The other thing that's also different in de Blasio's New York versus Giuliani's, because that's when I was there, was Giuliani's New York, is that it is horrendously dirty in New York. They were like, I don't know what happened, but de Blasio they don't clean up the streets in New York anymore. There's this sense of, it was a very, very dark energy when I was walking, you walk a lot more when you're in New York. I just felt this sense of darkness in New York City in broad daylight. And again, it's almost as if de Blasio and others made the foundation for riots to occur. Like certain things like not cleaning up trash or not picking up trash or getting your schools to look a certain way or feel a certain way sets the stage for chaos, confusion, and destruction. Is it deliberate? Like, perhaps, but it's very weird to watch it in real time. Like, de Blasio is a socialist. It's like he's unapologetically a socialist. So was this a part of the laying the foundation for them to be doing what they're doing in New York now? I don't know. I really don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and the thing about this, whether or not it was in DC or anywhere else in New York, is just that, the painting of Black Lives Matter on the street, it is just to antagonize, people like Trump or the other, or people like us. In essence, they're meaningless words. There's no action behind it per se. There's, with this as a politician looking like they're supporting this, this movement and whatnot. But, what would happen if, we tried to say, hey, can we petition to have all lives matter or blue lives matter? I mean, what would happen to us if we did that?
Well, and I'm thinking about it too. Again, when I saw it on 16th Street, isn't that defacing public property? It's not your street. You know what I mean? It's a public thoroughfare. It's again like that. I cannot get away from, and again, this is a freaking tactic that they're using. They are amping it up to a point where you cannot get away from their messaging. So inundated, onslaught, so that anyone who is against it is the enemy. What do you do with your enemy? You can kill your enemy. Those are the ruling principles of a socialist takeover. That's what we're doing. That's what we're witnessing. And when you learn more about socialism, that's something where you're like, oh, it makes sense why they're doing it. This is part of their playbook. I'm baffled, to be honest.
Yeah, okay, so we'll spend the last part of this show here on something here, and I think it will feed right into your T-shirt today.
My T-shirt?
Team life. Okay, so the Supreme Court
Mhm.
they've issued a couple of rulings. Actually, a couple interesting rulings. I mean,
Mhm.
first of all was this one on the Louisiana and abortion clinic case, and they voted to strike down this Louisiana law. I think you have opinions about both of these cases. The other one was public funding for private religious institutions to schools. You
Right.
know, this was a case I think out of Montana.
Mhm.
Um, so it was, I guess, for conservatives, it was kind of a split decision, right? I mean, the Montana case was a good one, the Louisiana case not such a good one. But conservatives took a lot. You know, they've been taking a lot of aim at Chief Justice Roberts for the decisions that have been issued this term so far
Yeah.
about not showing a very conservative tone, or the ones they thought he seems to be much more the swing vote, the Anthony Kennedy type. And Texas had a similar case, I guess, back in 2016, and
Mhm.
Roberts ruled, and to keep that law intact. Now there
Right.
are some differences, but here they are for pro-life forces. They're very unhappy with this decision, but Roberts came down and said, well, they didn't meet the requirements. He was looking at a couple things, and they didn't meet these requirements that he was looking at.
Right.
I mean, give me your take on this as a good, solid pro-life Christian.
Yeah. So speaking of which, I haven't always been, right?
Right.
So I've been going through my move, and I have a bunch of stuff still from law school because I went from law school, then campaigning and whatever. So I found this. Do you see that?
Yep.
This is from 2005, and it reads the 2005 National Convention. That was when I was an intern between my second and third year in law school. I worked for ACS, right? So again, they have been gunning for the Constitution in 2020. What year is this? Like back in 2005, it's like, oh, 2020 is a long time
Yeah.
ago
Right.
now. And now we're like right in it, right? The left, again, I didn't know that I would be a part of the right until I became a part of the right. I was pro-choice and everything. But all of this stuff sort of like is way clear now when you see how important these decisions are. So the ACS was supposed to be an answer to the Federalist Society. Again, when I was in law school, I thought that those were the boogie people, right? Right? And now I'm a member of the Heritage Foundation. So it's just like, what? It's so amazing, right? So anyway, ACS was founded in 2001. And their whole point is to promote a progressive vision of the Constitution, law, and public policy, educate lawyers, law students, decision makers, and the public, strengthen intellectual underpinnings of progressive law and policy in the United States, build a diverse and dynamic national network of students, lawyers, academics, et cetera, et cetera. Today, which is 2005, America's values, our constitutional heritage, and the freedoms and opportunities of our people are being undermined by a narrow, conservative approach to the laws which lack appropriate regard for the ways in which laws affect people's lives. This whole issue, particularly abortion, is the most important issue, not necessarily to conservatives, but it absolutely positively is to progressives. And if you have, like, I will put money on that. They know that Roe v. Wade was a bad decision. It was a 7-2 decision made in 1973. Even Roe herself didn't go through abortion. Oh my goodness. Even she, normally Nelson, did not end up having an abortion herself. She turned into an active pro-life advocate all the way until she died in 2017. They know that they are not on the side of society. So what do? They hyper-focus on only 9 people. That is their plan. They only need to work on 9 people. They don't have to work on the 500 and some odd people, 547 people who are in Congress. They know how
535.
535, right. I added a bunch of people.
You've got the Barack Obama 57 states map.
Right, exactly. My bad. So anyway, and of course, as you can tell, you can't really control who gets in the presidency because of that darn electoral college, right? They, all the way back in 2005, were figuring out how are they going to stack the courts. They have been stacking the courts ever since then, whether it's the ninth circuit, which is mostly California, the Seventh Circuit, all of these, again, the courts right before Supreme Court, the appellate level, the left have been stacking courts while President Obama was in office. They needed Hillary Clinton in order to shore up and secure abortion rights and or the right to kill your baby whenever you want. That is what they needed. Even having President Trump just be elected not only destroyed their plans, but that's why they're getting virulently violent to protect their demonic activity. The two justices are fully conservative that President Trump nominated or placed on the bench. Justice Roberts is not a full-blooded conservative. He's not. He's going to be a swing vote. I don't mind him being a swing vote, but the whole issue has always been, for the last, since Roe was decided in 1973, for the left to make it a nationwide right for women to kill their babies whenever they want. That is what they fight for tooth and nail. Not necessarily the conservatives, because unfortunately, as we watch and witnessed, the conservatives, the ones that we need, tend to back off because it is the fight of a lifetime. You're dealing with life and death. And people like, no offense to Justice Roberts, he lives in Chevy Chase. Sorry, I'm just going to let you know. I actually literally looked him up when I was running in District 18. I was like, oh my gosh, Justice Roberts can vote for me. That'd be so great. But that didn't happen. Anyway, they are not people who live in that world as conservatives in a place like Chevy Chase. Unless you're a full-on activist, the people who need to still be relevant in DC cannot do anything that will let the left know that they are not supportive of abortion. If they do that, they will be canceled. And that cancel culture existed before it hit the media. It exists in our neighborhoods here in Chevy Chase. These folks will bully you to no end and literally run you out of a neighborhood if they notice that you are conservative. When I talk about hate culture, that's where it starts. It starts at the home. And these decisions, that's why there's so many of them, because this issue is the constitutional issue of forever. It is something that we all have to fight for because it got that much legitimacy. And when they were able to do that in 1973, all bets were off. I know that's like a ramble and a rant, but like the other thing that's good about Louisiana's decision is that, again, that's the power of federalism. That is the reason why we as pro-lifers should be happy in that it only affects that law. It doesn't affect this whole country. That is what the progressives want. They are literally, even between abortion to like wearing masks, people, they want to mandate it throughout the country. That is totalitarianism. We are not we don't want to be a totalitarian government. So I just want people to understand how important President Trump's reelection is for both sides. If you care about this country, and this relates to one of your topics, it absolutely does have to do with the Supreme Court. It always had to do with the Supreme Court, and more so now, as of this week, it's a reminder as to how important it is. Will this rally Biden's base that doesn't exist? Yes. But everyone else needs to understand how important President Trump's second election is. We only need one other. We already have two. These are lifetime appointments. That's why Justice Roberts, who replaced Justice Rehnquist, these people, no offense, get really old on the Supreme Court. Like, I don't know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is like 89. Like, we question if she's alive or not. Like, she is like holding on. She got the magic potion for real to stay alive, for real, right? These lifetime appointments are integral. I would argue more important than who we elect for who we have as president. Because presidents are term limited, right? So you only have 4 to 8 years of a presidency. You could end up having 25 years of a justice on the Supreme Court plus. So I want to, again, reiterate, one decision or another decision or 5 decisions. There's 16 pending abortion cases in the appellate court right now, in the courts right before the Supreme Court. 16. So this is, it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
And I want to just say, with regard to that too, is that, you mentioned Ginsburg, is that, if Trump winning re-election probably almost guarantees that the Ginsburg seat will become open. She's got great genes apparently.
Don't put money on that, man.
But she has had ill health, and there, you have to kind of balance one against the other. The other thing is that I would speculate that if Trump gets reelected, that Clarence Thomas might look at retiring to get if the Senate. Now the other part of this equation is that the Senate has to be in Republican hands. Yeah. As well. That has to remain in Republican hands, because if the Republicans can't control the Senate, they're going to have a hard time getting a nominee through there anyway. But sure. If things line up the way that conservatives and Republicans want to, then Thomas could consider somewhere along the line of resigning and opening up a seat for a conservative to fill that, younger person to go 25 or 30 years, because Clarence Thomas has been on the court a long time. He is getting up there in age. Oh, it's a tough thing, because we love Clarence Thomas, but
I didn't always love Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, right. I know you didn't always love Clarence Thomas, but I think some of these Republicans, they have, these justices have to think strategically. If Trump gets a second term, I think the odds are that that Pence or anybody else running in 2024, the Republicans are going to have a harder time holding the White House in 2024. So therefore, the next 4 years becomes critical to setting the stage for the Supreme Court. So it's all speculation at this point, because Trump has got to win the election first and foremost, and then we can deal with what the aftermath is.
Right. Like, this is, I don't know. That's why the founding of this country was divine intervention. Like, those founders literally created the darn near perfect governing structure, to whereas no branch has ultimate control. Like you mentioned, the 3 branches of government, literally, they check each other, by design, right? But going back to it, it goes back to the American citizenry and the vote. People vote. You know what I mean? Like, activate your citizenship, support conservative folks. And I go back and forth about, supporting Republicans and supporting Democrats, but whoever is the most conservative person on the ballot, vote for that person, contribute to that person, volunteer for that person, spread the word for the most conservative. The most conservative might not be the Republican. just be mindful. And again, going back to the power of American citizenry, no other country has that power, not even the UK. The UK still falls under Queen Elizabeth, people. You know what I mean? You're still subject to the crown. We are not. So that's all I got to say.
All right. I think we'll leave it at that on that note. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and continue to like and share this around. Please stay safe, stay well. Remember that we do live in the greatest country in the world. We've been talking a lot about that today. And God bless America. Have a wonderful 4th of July. Thank you, Liz, for joining me.
Yay, God bless you.
God bless you, everything like that. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your day, Liz. And we'll do this again next week. And I'm going to end the live stream and end the recording.